A new AI startup just raised $1 billion, and they are promising to deliver nothing.
But Ilya saw something, Kevin. The former OpenAI co-founder, Ilya Sutskever, and an Apple AI former lead are teaming up on something big.
Yeah, but if we can't play with it, Gavin, then it's basically nothing.
It's a very big something, Kevin. You take that back. It is their first big swing at safe superintelligence.
And new details on GPT-Next have emerged from Japan, and these words are coming straight from the horse's mouth. そしてこれらの言葉は馬の口から直接出てきています。
That's right, Kevin. We'll bring you up to speed on OpenAI's plans for 2024. That's this year.
Plus, we are using Runway's new Extend feature to go well beyond and pretty far into your favorite moments in pop culture. We're talking Star Wars to Doom, even The Last Supper, if that counts as something you might get a Funko Pop of.
You won't believe who's coming to dinner. And we'll show you how easy these are to make, plus a very cool Minecraft AI experiment and all the other news this week.
This is AI. これは人間のための人工知能です。
Stop that. You stop that right now.
ごめんなさい。
Stop it, Kevin.
Welcome, everybody, to AI for Humans, your weekly guide into the wonderful world of generative AI. We are here to demystify all the big news. I am Gavin Purcell. Kevin Pereira is here. Kevin, how are you this week?
I am well, and I am ready to dive into this week's headlines, sweet Gavin.
That's right. We are going to jump right into it. It is time for the news.
News. News. It's the AI for Humans news.
All right, Kevin, the news is big and fast and really interesting this week because we have finally have more details on what Ilya Sutskever saw. Not really. We have more details on what Ilya Sutskever's new company, Safe Superintelligence, is and what it's going to try to do. But most importantly, we have new news that Ilya Sutskever's company, which is literally a group of people, a text website, and a promise, just raised $1 billion in a seed round. Now, this is the new,
Gavin, when I was in junior high school, I got like 9 of my buddies together and we made a website. It was about aggressive inlining. It was called Pumped on Adrenaline, POA, if you're fancy. It was basically the same thing. Oh, 100% real.
Oh my God, we can find that somewhere. Does that exist online?
Chain wallets. I'm sure it's on a Wayback Machine somewhere.
Oh, wow. Somebody has to find that for us.
Immortal and Storm Shadow, just front-siding all around that 7-Eleven, getting their Slurpees on. Point is, it's a little bit more than just 10 dudes in a website. Like, yes, these are some of the most brilliant minds in artificial intelligence. Former lead of AI at Apple, coming together with Ilya. Big heavy hitters coming in, raising $1 billion at a rumored $5 billion valuation. But the fascinating thing to me, Gavin, is that they're kind of making nothing, as I alluded to at the beginning. At least the plan is they don't have to focus on making anything other than superintelligence, which is kind of a big undertaking, but they're not going to worry about productizing it along the way. They get to focus on the prize.
So I think we should talk and let our audience know why superintelligence could be worth $1 billion at a seed round. So just so everybody's clear, we talk a lot in the show about a thing called artificial general intelligence, which is kind of what all the models are kind of shooting to get at, which is the idea that a AI could be as smart as a regular human, kind of do all the stuff a regular human could do, be even smarter than a regular human, be able to do those sorts of things. But the next step past that, which many people believe once we hit AGI, that it will be able to improve itself to what is known as an ASI, artificial superintelligence, is essentially the like digital god of sci-fi, right? Like the idea that a AI could know more than every part of humanity, could figure out things that are remarkable, that could really like break through some of the stuff that has stopped humans across the board, meaning could figure out brand new physics. It could invent things on its own. It could change the way that we actually live our lives. This is what this company is shooting for. And the reason why it's conceivably valued at $5 billion is that if this thing can get made, it will provide an immense value, right? Like you're talking about like tens or hundreds of trillions of dollars of value conceivably based on the sorts of things that it could invent or create.
Here's the thing. Like, it's not just a race to the trillions of dollars, but it might be a winner take all race. And that is the big bet, that whoever gets there first wins and rules the day because your super intelligence can outmaneuver everybody else. And if these things are self-improving, that millisecond of head start means you're 1 millisecond better than everybody else until it decides it wants to be Skynet. Now, Daniel Gross, who is the former Apple lead, he said, quote, "One thing that excites us is when you find people that are interested in the work, that are not interested in the scene, in the hype."
Who are those people,
Whose bow
Kevin?
is he shooting across, Gavin? Who's he shooting?
Who's he talking to us? He's talking directly to, yeah. Get away from me, Daniel. I'll do what I want to do. I want to be myself. I think this is kind of a shot at Sam Altman a little, because it's very much, Sam has been out there doing his worldwide tour talking about this. And I think that these people are, they're very serious people, let's call them. Ilya always seemed to come across, even though in private people say he's very jokey, in the world at large, when you listen to recordings with him, and again, I do suggest you go back and listen to the interviews that Ilya has done, the long form interviews, because these are the people that are looking to make the technology progress as far as it can. And Kevin, I do want to point out something we should shout out. This is a news article from Reuters that SSI, the company, kind of gave this information to. And Ilya specifically said that he's identified a mountain that's a little bit different from what he was working on. And this is like the guru coming down who's like spent his time up in meditation land for a year. He comes down and he says, "Gentlemen, I have identified a new mountain that is different than what I am working on." You have to listen, because this is the guy who really moved us to the stage of AI that we're in now.
Ooh, 2 questions actually for you. One, the company that's worried about getting to super intelligence but making it safe in the pursuit is going to most likely move somewhat slower than the other company that's like, who cares? Just get there, be damned. No guardrails, let's go. Or are government regulations going to get so involved that the only company that's allowed to use up all the energy required and all the resources necessary is going to be the one that gets the nod, the seal of approval from the government? Or, Gavin, maybe third scenario, the government only wants the one that's recklessly racing there.
Yes.
And so they say, hey, guardrail guys, yeah, you do what you're doing over here, but secretly we're giving billions of dollars to this other. What is going to happen is the question that I'm asking, Gavin.
I'm so confused. But you know, Kevin, what I'm not confused about? I'm very straight on this fact. You should be subscribing to our YouTube channel right now. That's right. You out there, if you're not subscribed, listen to this podcast. Let's watch us on YouTube.
There was actually a real question in there, Gavin. Like, is the pursuit of safety going to slow them down, or is it going to be the only thing that lets them get there because of the government?
I'll answer that after everybody watching this video subscribes to our YouTube channel, joins our Patreon, and also goes to our Discord, with the links will be up below here. But yes, Kevin, I think so. My take on that.
Oh, wait,
really,
you forgot, Gavin. A super intelligence would know to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because
that's right, because we'll be reading it at the end of the show. You know it. Okay, so very quickly, to kind of put a button on this story, I probably think that the government is going to have its hands in this from the very beginning. I think Ilya is very much concerned with the idea of a rogue superintelligence, or a superintelligence that doesn't have guardrails on it. The company is literally called Safe Superintelligence. I do think there's a world where these two companies diverged, and then eventually they come back together in some form, which I think could be interesting. A reuniting of the two companies. But what I think is going to be really interesting to track is just like, what does ASI even mean for us as people, right? Like, I think this is the thing that if it happens within the next decade even, we are going to be entering super weird times in general.
Well, I can't wait to ask my AGI how I should feel about ASI.
There's actually some interesting OpenAI updates on their next model that came out this week, weirdly from a Japanese conference of sorts, where somebody at OpenAI kind of dropped some new information.
Yeah, it's called GPT-Next, Gavin. And if my early aughts MTV viewing told me anything, I guess it's that these AIs are going to be on a bus and then they go on a date. And if they don't like the user that they're interacting with, they just AI
you're out,
next,
you're out.
And then someone else comes off the bus.
Swipe left, AI. Swipe left.
That's a reference for nobody. No one's going to care about that.
What is it? Swipe left or swipe right that sends somebody away? Do you know?
Left is a dismiss. Right is a yes, miss.
Oh, that was a tell. You've been on those apps, Kevin. You've been on those apps. It's clear. I don't know what those. I don't know.
Been on. I am married, Gavin. I am on. Wait a minute. No, cut that out. Me, no, to Kevin, cut that out. Let's talk GPT next. Let's get serious now. Rumored to be 100x more powerful, which is 2 orders of magnitude better than what we have access to right now, and more efficient as well. So it will run with the compute clusters that OpenAI already has. It's not going to cause massive citywide blackouts anywhere.
We've heard this referred to as GPT-5, GPT-Next everywhere. There's a really interesting tweet from somebody at OpenAI themselves. This guy's name is Boris M. Power on Twitter. He's the head of applied research, and he was replying to somebody who had just talked about canceling their ChatGPT subscription. And he said, "I'm sorry we failed you, and thanks for the patience. Hopefully we rectify this soon and make the subscription way more valuable." So all of this, Kevin, just points at the idea, as we've been saying for a while, that there is something coming from OpenAI. We think that it will come post-election, because I don't think they want to get in the middle of all this stuff. But imagine this. Let's do a little hypothetical here. Okay. Imagine that they drop post-election a fully functional GPT-4o with all the new stuff that they promised us that hasn't been there yet, including advanced voice, and then drop like a Sora for people to use, because that would make sense at this point. And either drop or tease GPT-Next with real, actual showcases of what it's going to be able to do. That feels like we're stepping into the next level of what this is. And all the people that are the AI haters in the world will be able to eat some crow a little bit.
And you can say no to this, Gavin, but did you want to read Boris Power's tweet again, but like in a more somber tone? And then I will translate it into Japanese, and we'll put a rain effect over you and put some like sad anime music there.
私たちがあなたを失望させてしまったことをお詫び申し上げ、忍耐に感謝いたします。できるだけ早くこれを改善し、サブスクリプションをより価値のあるものにできることを願っています。
That's anime dramatic.
That's powerful.
And now that no one is left in the YouTube or the podcast, Gavin, now is the perfect time to talk about XAI and the Colossus, which is probably named after the wooden roller coaster, or probably named after the X-Men. Or maybe it's named after the 1970 movie The Forbin Project, Gavin, which is about a computer that becomes sentient and takes over all of humanity.
So yes, XAI has made the announcement, or Elon has made the announcement, which you always have to take with a little grain of salt, that he has brought on the Colossus 100,000 H100 cluster, which means that they have put together 100,000 H100s and brought it online for an AI training run, which means that Grok 3, supposedly that's the next model of Grok, is going to be super powerful. Now, we don't know what that means. We don't know what a training cluster like this can provide. There is and speaking of the grain of salt, Kevin, there's a little bit of a backstory here that people have talked about the power needs of what this would be, and that it's very likely that it is not fully online, even though it may be connected and it may be all put together. I think AI power is going to be the story of probably the next year or two, about how much power it actually takes to put these giant training runs into the process. I mean, it does feel like we've been through all this kind of very much the climate change conversation over the last 15 to 20 years. There's going to be another big round of AI is bad for the environment conversations. But again, this goes back to the idea that these giant tech companies really believe that these runs and this amount of energy is worth the cost of what we're doing.
Well, yeah, of course they believe that. Are you saying that they believe it because it could help with things like solving energy dependency and the climate crisis and leading to, cleaner, better utopia, the Demolition Man future?
Yes, I guess the argument is like when you're looking at something that chunked a bunch of energy before, which is like something like Bitcoin mining or other things that the tech companies have done that cost a lot of energy, there is a end game to this that is much more valuable. Another interesting story popped from the information this week, where there's another $125 billion AI cluster being built. We know the one that was Project Stargate from Microsoft is in the process. There's another one which we don't know exactly what company is doing it. Again, it is that race we talked about at the top of this, right? Like everybody is racing to get to this thing. Actually, I saw a really interesting quote from Larry Page the other day, which I hadn't read. I think it was from a while ago, which basically said he doesn't care if Google goes bankrupt. They have to win this. Not an exact quote, but that's the thought of what he was saying.
If you're going to take a swing this big, you have to have at least publicly facing those beliefs.
Yes,
I mean, that's similar to what Sam Altman has said, right? He doesn't care if they bleed out $1 trillion or $5 trillion.
Yeah.
The end goal is worth it on that level to them. But listen, if I can just have a in-depth real emotional connection with my Alexa as I discuss, are we going to order new Tide Pods? Can we get some allergen-free ones up in this household? Oh, it's so worth the melting of whatever is left of our ice caps. Let the polar bears tread water. I want a better Alexa.
Here's an answer from tidepods.blogspot.com, Kevin. So this is a funny thing. So for the story here is that Alexa is going to start embedding Claude in it, which for us is, at least for me, is like a giant win. We have these Alexa devices around our house. It would be amazing. Every time my wife and I ask Alexa a question, we're so frustrated with how bad it is. I think this is like a sneaky giant story. And now, just to be clear, you're going to have to pay extra money for this. It is going to be a paid service. It's not going to be free.
A couple things to point out. Amazon invested in Claude's parent company. It's held up, I guess, in a UK court, but pretty sizable investment. Amazon tried to roll out their own AI and these assistants. They've been trying to for over a year. They have their own models. They have their own Titan model in-house. It's not where it needs to be, apparently, and that's not just my opinion. That must be Amazon's opinion, because they're
Andy Jassy's opinion, I think, the CEO of Amazon. Yeah.
And when you look at what they're proposing for the $5 to $10 a month subscription, daily AI generated news summaries, okay, a child focused chatbot, which I think is interesting, and conversational shopping tools. And if you use the Amazon app and played around at all with their AI, which I tried not too long ago, I was trying to get it to recommend different products to me. Pretty interesting the way they're trying to integrate all of the reviews of products and then spin that into a conversational chatbot. But I still felt like I was very much chatting with a chatbot and not with a smart assistant. So would be interesting to have this in Alexas. I am shocked they're going to charge $5 to $10 for that experience, though.
It does seem weird considering how much money Amazon has and considering how big it could be if they didn't charge for it. And I would think this gives reason to get more Alexas again, like actually to buy an Alexa for people, or to like buy your parents an Alexa. But you know, Kevin, the most important thing here is that we need an Alexa that will be able to give instructions to our new home bots, our new Neo 1 beta robots.
Oh, you're getting the Neo? You're getting the Neo, Gav? You're getting the 1X?
I want to get hugs. I want hugs. I want a robot that's going to hug me and feel nice. If you missed this, just this story from earlier this week, there is a brand new human android on the market. It is the 1X Neo beta robot, and it looks frighteningly like robots we've seen in science fiction. It has a glass face that I'm assuming can light up in some form and do interesting stuff.
Yeah, it looks like it's some sort of screen.
Yeah. But it also has like this kind of fabric-y looking thing that many people think looks fake, but it isn't fake because we've seen enough about it now. Again, I specifically want to talk about it gets real thick at the bottom of its legs. There's something really weird about this robot's ankles, and I don't know what's going on.
If you are picturing this, because you're not watching the YouTube, imagine a 5'4" robot, about 66 pounds, walks at 2.5 miles an hour, can run at 7.5 miles an hour.
That's pretty fast.
Can carry 44 pounds, and it runs for 2 to 4 hours, depending upon what it's doing on a charge. Now, you're picturing this kind of small, fairly nimble home robot, and now Gavin's going to obsess over one portion of it. Go ahead, Gavin.
So the ankles, for some reason, are like they get wider at the bottom, and I don't understand. We haven't seen this robot run yet. That's one thing. It says 7.5 miles an hour. I don't think we've seen it run. No. And also, most of the videos of the factory have the cord connected to it, which is a way that robots can continually get power. The video they did release of it working around a home is like it kind of pulls the dishes out of the dishwasher, and then it kind of like sits and gives this woman a hug. I kind of think, though, this is the kind of robot that will end up in people's houses, right? Like you see the Figaro 2s and all these other super fancy robots. This feels like it's got that weird fabric on it. It looks like something that I could see in somebody's house in 2 to 5 years from now.
I could see it even in my house in a year from now as like a beta test, as something fun to have and try. And then I could see it in court maybe 2 years from then on, talking about Exhibit A with me, my face just mouth agape next to an evidence marker, because it moves in a way that I just am not ready to trust right now, but I kind of want one to beta test it. What's interesting is a lot of people are saying that the demos that they're showing, where it is making eggs or doing those dishes or putting things in cupboards, that it's actually being teleoperated. We're not seeing end-to-end AI behavior right now. But then I think about the Amazon self-checkout stores. Remember those, Gavin?
Oh, yeah,
the
totally.
story was that there was no AI involved whatsoever, that they had like thousands of workers
and then it was
in a
actually
remote country.
people in India, right? Yeah.
But imagine that's what the first wave of these home robots could be. That they actually might not need AI. You'll have one in your home, and then part of your subscription fee is that someone's going to get $5 an hour to teleoperate your robot and do your dishes, and then eventually resent you enough to throttle you with all of the servo power the X1 can muster.
Well, actually, this is a dumb thing to think about. And I know this is like, we're going off into a tangent here, but say that person in the Philippines is operating the robot. They're outside of the US jurisdiction. Like, if they were to do a crime, like, how is that going to work out? Like, that is an interesting thing to think about. Right. And is one of those weird problems that you don't really think about until you realize, oh, we're going to have these kind of robots in people's houses. I will say, I was making jokes about the fact that it hugged, and what if it hugged too tight against the person? Supposedly, this particular robot doesn't have that much strength. Specifically, it doesn't have a crazy amount of strength, but that doesn't stop it from, like, say, slipping a little bit of poison into your coffee in the morning.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
That's right. There's a bunch of just scatter some Legos by my bedside. You're going to cause pain.
Oh, also, that's a horrifying thing to do. I can't imagine. Imagine a jerk robot, having a jerk robot in your house.
I know you're hung up on the cankles, but no one's talking about salmon. Huge issue.
Salmon?
You got this thing.
Salmon?
You have this robot with this felt onesie of a bodysuit. Have you ever cooked salmon in a house?
Oh,
Gavin? You imagine how that robot is going to smell after just a week of doing basic chores.
Oh my God.
If you can't unzip that onesie and wash it, and then I don't want a naked robot moving about and seeing all its little...
What if it has junk and you didn't know it until that point either?
Why does it do junk? Why does it need it?
I'm going to say, what if it did, Kevin? You asked what if it has salmon, I asked what if it has junk. So anyway, we're moving on because we can't go any further, but I will say that makes me more horrified than anything I've heard about robotics yet. Having like a splatter of salmon on a robot.
Imagine it coming into the room like, can I help you? You're like, God, no, please. And put your robo bits away. Why do you have those? Why do you charge from there? It's really awkward when you kneel to the wall socket and it's just...
Oh my God. Okay, we're really moving on. There's a new AI text to video model.
I need a port.
Called Max Min that comes from China. We've seen some really interesting stuff at Diesel, Diesol. That's Dave Clark, our buddy Dave Clark, who makes incredible AI videos. Actually created this very funny lightsaber duel back and forth between Darth Maul and Darth Vader. So clearly IP is not a problem for them. There's a lot of really interesting spaghetti tests that they've done. Kev, I think the one thing I'll say about this is Kling is another Chinese video model, and I have not played with Kling a lot yet, and I'm probably not going to play with this one only because I guess I need a fake phone number. I need a new phone number. I still don't feel super comfortable handing over my phone number to these Chinese companies.
I haven't used these yet. I haven't really found a need to yet. I mean,
me either.
The generations are great, but I'm having a lot of fun with Runway and using that, and Dream Machine as well. LumaLabs has a solid model, and they just added camera controls to theirs as well. So if you go to use Luma's Dream Machine, you can really get granular with how you want the camera to move around a subject, pan, tilt, zoom, etc. So I haven't really gotten into it, but the Chinese models are getting really, really good and very fast.
They're getting very good and very fast. And again, they do not have the IP restrictions that American models have, which I think is going to become a big problem relatively soon. I'm really curious to know, are American companies or is the government going to start restricting access to some of these things? And what will that look like and how will it happen? But we should move on. So, Kev, the last thing I want to talk about in the news this week is there was a very long article from The New Yorker by the sci-fi writer Ted Chiang, who is an incredible writer. He's written a bunch of really amazing short stories in sci-fi. The movie Arrival is based on one of his short stories, but he had an essay that is called Why AI Isn't Going to Make Art. And I think you and I both had pretty strong feelings about this. Essentially, he's arguing that as an artist and a writer, that like AI is a copy machine that is never going to be able to make the kinds of things that people do because people make creative choices. They make creative ideas. They come out of the blue. When I read it as a fan of Ted Chiang, and I really do like him a lot, I felt it pretty specious. And I think that there's this divide amongst creative people who really do need to spend some more time playing with these tools, even if they hate them. even if they hate
Yes.
them, because it will help you understand what's going on here.
So when I read this article, I was like, oh, clearly this is someone who's thought a lot about writing and human creativity and art, capital A-R-T, art. But it felt like someone who hadn't actually used AI to try to create art. The argument shifted to me all over the place from, well, can it be art without human intervention? What is art in general? Is it a series of decisions and choices? Is it the need to communicate? It was sort of wishy-washy. It just kind of felt like a general attack on these tools, which I'm used to by now. I just wanted more from it. For example, it starts off with, right now, the fiction generated by large language models like ChatGPT is terrible. But one can imagine that such programs might improve in the future. How good could they get? Could they get better than humans at writing fiction or making paintings or movies, in the same way that calculators are better at addition and subtraction? That's yes. The answer is yes. Years ago, the question would have been, can AI generate anything like this?
Yeah.
And now we've moved the goalposts, we've dragged them through the AstroTurf and got it to, but can it do it in a not a horrible way? And I would submit that most art in general is terrible. I don't know if you've seen Love and Gelato on Netflix.
No.
That made it past pitch sessions and budgeting all the way onto the Netflix dial. Most terrible art has the decency to die in a Google Doc or on our YouTube channel. Most art is terrible, and that's okay, because some people make terrible stuff, and then over time, a handful of them get better. Just like these systems that we're talking about today couldn't even do it, and now they're doing it themselves, and some of it's terrible, but they will probably get better.
Yeah.
And then we get into the perilous trap of trying to define what art is, which is, to me, always a losing battle. But here the author's talking about art being the result of thousands of decisions. And if you want to go with that benchmark, okay, let's go for it. He then says, is there a similar opportunity to make a vast number of choices using a text-to-image generator? I think the answer is no. You think? You think the answer is no? Did you? I'm sorry. Could you ask somebody that makes anything outstanding with an AI tool to make art? Because yes, if you're just like casually scrolling DeviantArt and you see a bunch of busty, furry animorphs popping out of their crop tops, you might go, oh, that's a basic prompt. There's no art there. But if you talk to people that make, I'll say real, for the sake of this argument, AI art, you know, Gavin, that they spend hundreds of hours making thousands of decisions of which tools are going to use, how they're going to integrate them. I think there's way more effort going into some AI art than there are on these like guys that puncture holes into paint cans and swing them in attics above a canvas.
That's real art, Kevin. About? Come on, that's real art. I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yes. You know what? It is real art. But if that is real art, then so is what people are doing, like PERS with Comfy UI workflows.
Well, so let me talk about the one thing that I think is the most spurious part of this argument, which is the idea that he is using the idea that AI can create a thing that is art, right? And when you go into a large language model and you say, write me a book, that thing that comes out is not going to be good. And by the way, I don't know if it will ever be as good personally as what a human story could tell. In the same way, what you're going to get out of a straight to punch in prompt from a Midjourney prompt, I don't think is going to be as good as what an artist can do. Again, this is not about a one shot to art thing. That is not what the conversation that's happening here. You mentioned PERS, who's going to guest on our show, who's an AI artist. PERS is not out there putting one sentence into the AI machine, taking it out and saying, ta-da, this is art. It is a massive series of choices he or they or whoever's making this is making. And I would argue that like anybody who's saying, I put a prompt in and now it's art, I don't buy that as art. I really don't. But the vast majority of people that are working with AI are making these choices. A good example of this, as we talked about on our show a couple of weeks ago, is when I made those dumb videos that were like 2-camera dating videos called AI Dates for You. That first shot was from Midjourney, but it took me 30 different generations to get the shot of the guy. I wrote a script for that thing. And then every generation along the way, I had to tweak, edit, do all sorts of interesting things that were creative choices that were made by me. Now, I'm not saying those were art, but what I am saying is that is the creative process that comes out with AI, art and AI content in general.
Using ChatGPT to complete assignments is like bringing a forklift into the weight room. You will never improve your cognitive fitness that way. You want to go with lunk analogies? I've got enough body image issues and hours at the 24-hour fitness. Let me tell you something, brother. That is not the analogy to make. Because if you want to make real gains in the weight room, what do, Gavin? You get a spotter.
Yeah,
you get someone that'll push you a little harder and let you get
and
creative.
some testosterone shots, all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Let's talk about kettlebell swings. No, by the way, if you've never lifted before, let's go with that analogy. Then, if you've never lifted before, you probably want to get a coach. You want to get someone that can help bring you up to speed and help you with best practices. Someone who has 10,000 hours or 10 million terabytes of data and knowledge. I'm not saying you want the GPT to do the lifting for you. I don't think anybody is necessarily saying that. But as a guide, as a tool, as an assistant, it can supercharge art and the pursuit of it.
I mean, the easiest dismissal of that argument is the fact that when mathematicians got access to calculators, did their processing power go down? Did they forget how to do math? No, it actually just made the early stage stuff much simpler and allowed them to get to the much more complicated ideas later on. Now, I'm not saying that might not happen with writing, but one thing as somebody that's written books and tried to write books and screenplays is part of that is structure, right? And like structure could be something that an AI might be able to help you with. Like, I don't believe right now that an AI can write great sentences, and a lot of times it's going to feel very cliched, but books follow a structure. There is a structure to a book. You know that there is a midpoint, that there's a climax, that there is an all is lost moment. All of this stuff are things that are part of a structure of a book. And that is a thing you can learn and work with the AI for. Anyway, we spent a ton of time talking about this, but
AI is going to do it better eventually. All right, Gavin, let's move on to the part of the show where, as we talk about these machines not having souls, or maybe they do, we have an experiment that trapped thousands of souls inside a virtual environment. It's one of the many things that we are going to talk about in a segment that has us pausing and saying, hey,
I see what you did there.
Sometimes you're scrolling without a care. Then suddenly you stop and shout.
That's right, everybody. It's Project Sid. This is a new project from the people at Altera AI. This is a company that is focused on AI agents in video games and a bunch of other stuff. They put 1,000 AI agents within a Minecraft universe, let them figure their own thing out, create a society, and interesting things happen, Kevin. There was created a market on their own where they traded gems with each other. The thing I really loved in this video talks about the idea that the priest, the guy that they gave the priest character to, started bribing people to kind of like to follow its religion.
Yes. In the context of who would trade the most, they were getting bribed by religious folks in the town.
So this is just another good example. We've seen things like this before. We've talked about on the show where little AI agents go and do something. This is the next stage. One of the things that's interesting about this is Altera talked about the idea that these are not just within Minecraft, but they will have the ability to go outside of Minecraft into Discord or into emails and things like that eventually. And this is an early stage look at what AI agents could be. And we talked about in that last section just about like, is an AI, have the ability to come up with something artistic? In this instance, it's like, will the AI be able to go out and like create something new that would draw people into it? This is the kind of agentic AI world that we're going to be entering in the next, say, year or two. And this is not like science fiction. This is coming for sure.
One of the examples in the video, Gavin, is that a villager goes missing and the townspeople start discussing what they can do. And so they put little torches throughout the town at night to light it up, to hopefully create a beacon for this lost villager to notice, oh, that's where my village is. Completely agentic behavior that supposedly was not nudged at all. There were no thumbs on the scale. And when you look at the performance of the NPCs powered by AI in this world compared to some of those other earlier Minecraft-y experiments, they're discovering more items, they're crafting way more stuff, they're trading way more. So again, we talk about Project Strawberry or Q-Star, this ability to reason. As we start unlocking these behaviors within AI, we start to see way more performant results. I love this type of experiment. Everybody should go look at the video.
Speaking of Project Strawberry, Kevin, there's a great tweet that came out from user Good Side, because we talked about this last week about how OpenAI Strawberry is trying to solve the strawberry problem, which is how do you spell strawberry and how many R's are in the letter strawberry. Riley Goodside created a picture of an R with actual strawberries inside. No, they're virtual strawberries, but it is a literal R container with 7 strawberries in it. And they asked how many strawberries in the R. And Kevin, it was able to identify 7 strawberries. So what's interesting about this is the problem with strawberry in OpenAI, as we've talked about, is how they tokenize these words. And strawberry in particular is a big problem for them. But what's interesting is that from a picture of a strawberries, it was able to easily count them up. So you just get a sense of how these are different models working at different things.
Something a little more serious, but hopefully beneficial to our audience, is that people are using AI to fight health insurance denial claims, which is really fascinating. San Francisco tech worker by the name of Holden Carew, apologies in advance for butchering your name, but they have a website, Gavin, that you can go to and submit any health insurance claim. They ask you to remove personally identifiable information from it, and the site makes it very clear what is stored locally in your browser versus what is stored on their server. If you trust them to be on the up and up, if you live in the US, you know that health insurance is largely broken in this country. The insurers will deny you for claims, even if it's a service they should be providing, and they're using a custom fine-tuned model essentially to look at the denial of your claim versus your health history and what you say that you need, and it will craft a letter that you can use to rebut the denial of your claim. And yes, please, let's get more of this.
This is where the AI agents hopefully can start to work for us. I think in this instance, Holden is doing something that can really be a huge benefit, because these companies are nasty to deal with, and they can also really be aggressively anti-human. So I'm hoping this can be a big thing going forward.
Yeah, and I just looked down at my Kaiser app, which is actually just now a big Kermit the Frog with a stethoscope on it. And isn't that a great use of AI, Gavin?
I love this story. There's a guy named Damon Beres under @DLBERES on X, who basically took all of the apps on his iPhone and turned them into Kermits. So I'm assuming that he used Flux to do this, but it is just the coolest way to think about doing something dumb with AI. So if you look closely at this, the Kermit's all like the Instagram Kermit icon is like Kermit with a long flowing blonde hair holding his phone up to him. The authenticator icon is a Kermit with a nightstick and a cop's uniform. So to me, this is just a very dumb, fun use of AI. And I might go do this myself with Guy Fieri today. We'll see how it goes.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, oh, Gavin, right? You have to do that. You just gave yourself some homework. But you have some homework, to do that.
Exactly. Super fun. Well, speaking of homework, Kevin, we want to talk a little bit about what we did with AI this week. We played around with Runway Gen 3's 40-second extension. So if you missed this, what you can do now is you can take a single Runway video. It has to happen in their Gen 3, not their Gen 3 turbo mode, but you can extend it out to 40 seconds. We've seen some really cool people do some interesting stuff. It does seem like it works best on sweeping shots that are like, environmental in some way. But we also found some different things to do with it. I know you spent some time with it as well.
I started feeding it popular game box art cover like Doom or Katamari Damacy, and I would get immediately generation errors. And I think I was getting flagged for moderation. It was probably detecting a copyrighted work or something. I found that if I massaged the prompt, and instead of saying like a dramatic zoom out of a space marine and just said like a fighter with guns or whatever, and if I just made it a little more vague, the generations would go through. But once you get a first generation, Gavin, there's a button in the bottom left-hand corner that says extend. You smack that, you can give it additional prompting to help it understand what it should be seeing as it zooms out or in some cases. But I just left it blank because I wanted it to hallucinate and see what it would come up with. And I did everything from video games like Halo and Doom, and again, Katamari Damacy, even Street Fighter stages. I did movie posters like Star Wars and Jaws.
Wait, yeah, let's talk about the Star Wars one, because I think this is a good example. If you're not watching the video, I'll just describe what's happening. So it's the classic Star Wars poster where it's Luke, Han, and Leia, and then Darth Vader behind. But what's interesting is it just kind of gently pulls out, and it starts to give you this really interesting, like, second planet. So like just giant spaceships fighting each other. And then at the very end, by the way, it's suddenly clear that we are like on a movie set, which is interesting. There's a person that shows up at the side. There's a person there. And then there's a complete transition to something entirely different. But I will say the first 30 seconds feel like or just a really cool way to kind of bring something to life.
You're right. Once you extend it beyond the initial 10 seconds, it holds a little bit. When you go another 10 seconds, it starts to get a little wonky. The bicycle's wobbly. Beyond that, sometimes it just fully changes the scene. But in that Star Wars one, I just realized that 26 seconds in or so, there's a step and repeat happening in the bottom right-hand corner on top of a Star Destroyer. I don't know why it threw that there, but I love that it did. The Katamari Damacy one had me really excited because I decided to go inward on the art. The iconic Katamari scene where a ball of random objects is looming large in the distance as it consumes a city. I told it to zoom in because I wanted to see if it would hallucinate little details in the buildings and stuff. And as it zooms over the skyscrapers, you see what looks like the big rainbow arch from the Apple campus. Yeah, surrounded by all these city streets and cars. And there's a minute there, Gavin, where if you just look at it, it starts to bring up what a full motion video or live action Katamari Damacy would be like. And it's delightful.
By the way, great idea. Great idea. I do want to talk about one more of these before we go, which is your Last Supper photo, which is there's a lot of very interesting and potentially blasphemous things happening here, Kevin. I want to be clear. We're starting the Last Supper photo. And as we pull out, we realize, there is a female apostle on the far right. And maybe Eugene Levy has shown up there. But then we are not just at the Last Supper. We are at what looks like a conference dinner for a bunch of people who are going to talk and hear Jesus talk. So maybe we didn't know that Jesus was a TEDx talker. And this is the original TEDx. It's just TEDx. The Last Supper was actually a TEDx conference.
I love this stuff. I love playing with this stuff. I know you can really craft something and make it beautiful and perfect. I love leaving the prompt blank.
I think it's me too.
Just sort it out. Anybody can do this with a single image, drag it into Runway Gen 3. Like you said, don't use turbo, use the regular model. Yeah. And once you get a generation that works, you can just keep clicking extend in the bottom left-hand corner. You can do it up to 40 seconds.
Take a look at what I did. I took our thumbnail from last week and I put it in there and I extended it. Because the weird thing about when you put a thumbnail in is it tries to figure out what it can do with the people's faces. Now, in this instance, what you'll see is we slowly start kind of zooming out and the galaxy becomes more and more. But then super surprise comes in.
It didn't even try to hallucinate a torso for us. It gave you some arms a little bit. Yeah. But as it zooms out, then there's a burst coming out of a strawberry, which is floating between our heads. Whoa! Oh, yeah.
Who's that guy?
Who's that guy? And is this fashion in the future, Gavin, that you just get? Imagine when bowlers wear a glove that only covers their thumb and their two fingers for their hand, for better grip.
It's just the shoulder this time.
It's just a shoulder to a tricep, and then it flanks a nipple, and that is a future shirt as the strawberry comes back in. Well, I have my marching orders for next week.
Yeah. So basically what I love with thumbnails, it will show people and then it'll have other people kind of show up because they think, if there's two people in this picture, there's another one shows. So in this instance, a random person shows up as we go further back into the galaxy, but it's super fun. Great. It's amazing. We love it. All right, Kevin, it's time for our 5-star review this week. Always, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify Podcasts. We are now uploading video to Spotify, so hopefully you're enjoying that as well. But every time we get a 5-star review, we will read it here on the show. So this week, Kev, do you want to read our 5-star review?
From Mad Max 1661, 5 stars in the. This is. I love this. This is a new thing. This is a new 5 emoji stars in addition to the review. So thank you. AI amazing content. Human hosts.
Yes. For now.
I'm hooked on AI for humans. The hosts break down complex AI concepts so brilliantly, I'll keep watching until their AI doppelgangers inevitably take over. By then, my own AI clone will probably be tuning in for me while I'm sipping pina coladas with the original hosts in the Bahamas. We'll toast to our hardworking digital selves, keeping the paychecks rolling in. Who knew the robot uprising would be so relaxing? Highly recommend for both humans and their future AI replacements. No notes, Mad Max 1661, thank you for that 5-star review. If you don't have Apple Podcasts or writing a paragraph seems too daunting, I get it. We're all busy. We're all consumed. If you engage with us in any way, that helps. Share this podcast with a friend. That is how we grow. Like and subscribe on YouTube. That costs you nothing. Engage with us on Threads or X or over on TikTok, where Gavin is doing the Lord's work, posting over there feverish pace on the posts over there. So
TikTok,
please,
the only platform where you do the work and get nothing in return other than the love and joy of the people that are your audience. I think that's great. By the way, this is going to be a crazy month for AIs. If you have ever thought about sharing our show with somebody, this is the time to do it, because we are about to enter what I believe is the next stage of new tools coming out. So please share us with somebody, and we will see you in our Discord. Come to our Discord. We are actually there. So the link is in the show notes.
Yes, and if you want to hang out in the special VIP lounge,
yes,
you got to become a patron, Gavin. I know. You were about to drop the mic. You were like, "Let's go," and now you're okay. These are the reason for the season, Gavin.
That's right, exactly.
We can't rush the scroll.
No, the scroll, these are our patrons. If you're a patron for us, if you're a pretty good human, that is part of our Patreon levels.
If you're
you
a
are
pretty
getting,
good human.
That's what we called it, a pretty good human.
I just love it. It's like, you're pretty good.
Thank you, everybody, for supporting us. And if you want to support us on Patreon, go to patreon.com/AI for Human Show.
Bye.
Bye.